We've got a fun episode teed up for everybody today. We've got Robert Cabral on the show. Welcome, Robert.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. And for everyone listening, normally we don't put these episodes on YouTube. They're just on Spotify and podcast, or what's the other one? Apple Podcasts and a few other places.
Yeah.
This one we will post on YouTube. So if you're listening on Apple or something and you want to see the video, go over to the Suburban K9 YouTube channel and it will be there.
Hopefully soon all of them will be on YouTube.
Nelson has been pushing hard for us to get the whole catalog on YouTube, but it's a heavy lift.
Yeah, that's my job, and I've been avoiding it. So,
well, why don't we start with, I think probably every trainer listening knows who Robert is, but if you're a dog owner tuning in and you're not big into social media, you might not know who Robert is. So why don't we start there? Robert, can you walk us through who you are, what you're all about, a little bit of your history?
Sure. Should we talk about how we met at the mall yesterday?
This guy looks smart.
Yeah.
Get him on the show.
He's got a dog with it's a warm body, right? So basically, I've been training dogs for a little bit over 20 years, professionally 20, and really started with my passion for helping shelter dogs. That was what it was all about when I started. It's still pretty much the core mission that I focus on is helping people better understand dogs, keeping dogs from getting into shelters, helping dogs get out of shelters, and working in that aspect of getting a better understanding for why dogs have behavior problems, how to live with them, manage them, and do what's best for them. So thereby I started social media dog training. I think probably about 15 years ago is when the first stuff I posted on YouTube. That was before Facebook and Instagram were popular. I don't even think Instagram existed back then. And just approach it from a very holistic approach, very, open to everyone's input, putting good information out there, trying to keep the topic focused on dogs. And like I said, just keeping dogs out of shelters.
I love that. There's so many dogs in the shelters. And for anyone watching who hasn't seen Robert's stuff, go to all of his socials. We'll link them in the show notes here. But always cool dogs. And every time I look, I'm shocked how many mals and like working dogs are in the shelter in LA. What's up with that? Because I don't see that around here.
Well, you will. So I didn't see that. When I first started in the shelters, it was more shepherds and like Rotties. Then it became pit bulls. And then it really quickly ran from pit bulls into Malinois. It's also huskies and wolf dogs and such. I can tell you where that comes from. It's because we see all these people on social media doing these crazy things with Malinois, and every single person thinks, well, I could do that. And I've seen, some dog podcasts out there that say, well, a Malinois is a cheat code for a trainer because it automatically makes the trainer look good. And the only people who say that are people who don't have Malinois. It's idiotic. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard said on social media. And I've heard a lot of dumb things. But Malinois are a very high drive, thin nerve dog. So it's very similar to a pit bull in that sense, where they're very high drive and thin nerve. They go off on things. They're dog reactive. They're very prey driven. So you see what they're able to do, what you're able to do with the dog in a 60-second video after you edit the other hour and 60 minutes away. And now you got 60 seconds of really cool stuff. And people go, oh, I want that. And then sadly, we have really crappy backyard breeders who are breeding these dogs. We also have people who are people who are breeding dogs, and the ones that don't cut it, they're just willing to give them away because what else are they going to do with them? So it's a really tough dog to live with. There's two lines, obviously, of Malinois, or most working dogs. There's the working line and the show line. And if you get a show line dog, they're a little more nervy. They're a little less hard for the sports, and they sometimes will make better pets. But if you get a working dog, a working line dog, a working line bred dog, and it didn't cut it in the working lines, it means two things. It's either too hard and people can't handle that dog, or it's too nervy or too flighty and that dog won't work. Neither one of those is a good fit for a home, especially a home with children, with other animals, and a home with someone who doesn't really understand the breed and how to work it. So that's why you're seeing them in shelters. They're breaking down. And, like a lot of the ones in the shelters, they're just, they're shut down because they were obviously never given the opportunity to fulfill their real genetic traits. And sadly, it's legal. I mean, people can just, take dogs and give them to the shelters. And unless we start having people, remember, one thing I want to really stress on is it's not about saving dogs from shelters. It's about preventing dogs from getting into shelters in the first place. We will never, ever, ever, I've been doing this for 20 years. We will never adopt our way out of this problem. Never. You're going to need to do things like very, very targeted and aggressive spay-neuter, which a lot of people online have criticized me for. And look, my dog's intact. I pay a license fee for an intact dog. My wife has an intact dog. She actually pays the wrong fee. She pays a breeder's permit fee, even though she's never bred her dog and has zero intention to breed her dog. She just got the wrong permit. She doesn't want to change it. But most people go, well, I'm not going to pay the extra $20 to have an intact dog. And then they have an intact dog, which it's not about the $20, but think about the shelters. They're overrun, they're underfunded, they're understaffed, and countless dogs are coming in. Unless you go into these areas and find these people who have, and when I say these people, it's not a targeted thing of it's a black, white, Hispanic, Asian, or whatever thing. It's a socioeconomic thing. It's people who don't care about the dogs. The dogs are a commodity to them. If it doesn't work out with the dog, they get rid of the dog. If they're moving and they can't, the first apartment they find doesn't take dogs, they get rid of the dog. If the dog poops in the house, they get rid of the dog. Dogs are family members, right? They co-evolved with us for thousands of years. And now suddenly you've got people with a little extra testosterone and ego who say, well, it's just a dog. And it's not just a dog. Sadly, it's not just a dog. People who have dogs, and a lot of them, they live in their garages, in kennels and stuff like that. It just irks me to no degree. I could do the whole show just on how much people upset me about stuff. But anyway.
There's a lot of craziness out there. But hey, on the point of keeping dogs out of the shelter, I've been meaning to tell you about this. I've been maybe the last month doing some work with a local shelter, and they got a grant. I think it's through Pedigree, and it pays for training to keep dogs out of the shelter. So there's us and maybe four other trainers that are part of it. And when someone calls and says, hey, I'm struggling with my dog, I'm thinking about returning it, they contact us and they're like, hey, who will take this person on? And we get paid, and it's a discounted rate. It's not as much as we would normally charge, but it's not peanuts. It's reasonable. And then we go out and we train the dog. And I've probably taken on 6 or 7 clients already. And 5 of the, 5 or 6 of them are like, I was about to get rid of the dog, and just having some tools to know what to do has fixed it. And one, the jury's still out. It's a couple that might have the dog that they probably shouldn't have. It's not the best fit, but really cool, from just like a couple sessions, right? Showing them how to walk the dog, how to do some really easy stuff.
So where did they get that grant from?
From Pedigree, right? From the dog food company?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great way. I think, I give back a lot to things. I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, because I think somebody said that online. So what? Robert gives back and donates and does shelter work and keeps dog sports alive and donates scholarships stuff. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is I care about dogs. I wrote one scholarship this year for IACP. I've, always supported working dog trials, Schutzhund trials. I believe in giving back, and I've donated hundreds and hundreds of hours to shelters and continue to do that. But that, the training thing you're talking about, Matt, is huge. And I used to say, what I would do is I would say every animal shelter should have at least a weekly obedience class there that people can come and take. And I had this idea a while ago. I said, if you adopt a dog from a shelter, you should pay $500 for the adoption fee. And then included in that $500 is a 1-month course of dog training, right? You go every week, every Wednesday at 6:00. And at the end of the 4th one you come to, you get $400 back.
That's
right?
Cool.
So you're actually incentivizing people to do the training and saying, hey, it's $400. You're going to get it back. You only paid $100 for the adoption. But, people get into, people like, oh, poor people, they're working and stuff like that. Well, if you're working that much, you probably shouldn't have a dog. I mean, it's really important. We start to hold people accountable for their actions because we don't. And when people dump dogs in shelters, right away we say, oh, they're having a hard time or they're this or that, but not taking into account the hard time that dog is going to have in the shelter when it emotionally and physically breaks down and when it eventually gets a needle in its leg and gets thrown in a barrel with 30 other dogs. That's really hard, and nobody wants to address that. We need to address that.
I agree.
There's a lot of craziness out there, and we see it with the people that have 4 or 5 dogs, and they're like, we can't afford training, and vet bills are an issue. And like, why do you have 5 dogs? Maybe 1 or 2 max would be a better choice for you there.
Sure.
Well,
it's crazy about the amount of working dogs that are in shelters out by you in California, because I don't see a ton of them over here in Illinois, but I remember like when the movie Max was coming out, and there was another one that really featured a Malinois, and I was thinking to myself like, oh man, this is going to be crazy, right? Because we're going to see this sudden influx, but we never saw it, at least over here again in Chicagoland. They all went to California apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, here the shelters are pretty much still all pits and pit mixes. I mean, obviously there's some other breeds, but I feel like at least half pit mixes, if not more.
Well, I think still, if you look here, I think you'll still see a lot of pit mixes. I think, sadly, the breed that I try to get out more are Malinois because that's just my breed. I just like the breed, shepherds and everything. I did a lot of pits. I mean, 2008, 2009, 2010, I was doing videos at a different shelter, and you would see a ton of pits. You'd see, like lab mixes, hunting mixes and stuff. There's a bunch of different dogs. It's just, if you're drawn to one, I would tell you, if I would walk through the West LA shelter where I go regularly, I would say there's probably, I still say it's an abundance, probably 60% pit and pit mixes. And then from there you would get into, your working dog, your shepherds, your mals and stuff like that.
That shelter holds a lot of dogs, right?
That one doesn't. The West LA shelter is very low population, right? It's in a very, I don't want to say affluent neighborhood, but it borders affluent neighborhoods. So that shelter gets most of its dogs from other shelters. The girl who runs that shelter goes to the higher kill shelters like the South LA shelter or the East Valley shelter and picks dogs from there and brings them to her because they get less intake, a lot less intake. Some of the shelters will have intake of 30 dogs a day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
A day.
Does that shelter by you do dogs playing for life?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
A few of them do. Several of them do. I think almost all of them do. I think they got a grant to do it in all of them. That's
amazing. It's such a good program for the dogs.
Yeah, I started the dogs play group in the West in the entire LA City shelter system, and we were trying to staff it with staff and volunteers. The problem is there's not enough staff and volunteers in general. I love volunteers. They're the heroes of the dogs. But for the most part, they want to pet the dogs and throw a ball and give cuddles and kisses. They don't see the value in structured training. Because we also did the Good Citizen program. And those are 2 programs that I have in my online program that I taught that for a 24-hour course in the shelters every single month for years. And we did the Good Citizen, which was teaching basic obedience, long line work, basic obedience work, neutral introduction work, meeting stranger work, all that stuff, and even a basic behavior assessment. And we taught it to, staff from all over the country, shelter staff. Even one guy came from Metro Dade, Nashville, humane shelters. It's a city shelter, as well as everywhere else. But the problem is, you have to get people who are going to continue to do it. Most of the time, volunteers come and go. They want feel-good things, training a dog, telling a dog no, putting a dog on a leash, giving a dog a correction. They don't think it's good. But those sessions we did saw incredible increase in adoptions because when people saw what we were doing, they were like, oh my God, that dog can do that. Which is why if shelters had dog trainers, or at least volunteers who were apprentice trainers, just doing little things like a heel, a recall, a down, a sit stay, anything like that. People would be like, "Oh, that dog can do that. I'll take that dog." But it's a crapshoot. Like, you walk into a shelter, you see a 60-pound pit and is bouncing off the walls in a play group, and you go, "Oh, I can't handle that dog at my house." Sometimes
way too big.
Sometimes there's two things in shelters, right? And we don't have to talk about shelters this whole conversation, but it's just really interesting for people to understand. There's two things that dogs get and need in shelters. One is enrichment. And enrichment does not necessarily translate to an adoptable dog. So dogs playing in a group in a shelter is one of the most amazing, fantastic enrichments a dog can have. And it's very important mentally and physically for the dog to, one, be able to let their frustrations out and be a dog, because they can't be a dog. We're in their concrete shell. But also, what makes dogs very adoptable to people is seeing the dog's potential, taking it on a walk, taking it and training it, showing some cute things with it, and getting those pieces of information of the dog's personality out there. And you need both. It's one doesn't help the other. Just training the dog for 2 or 3 15-minute sessions a day is not enough for the dog. The dog needs to be able to interact with other dogs and run and be a dog and jump around. But if you see that, you see like 10 dogs jumping around, running around, growling and pinning each other down. We know as trainers they're having fun. We understand the body language, but the average consumer walking by is like, I don't want that dog. So
we see that with clients. We see that with owners. Owners are always asking us of, my dogs are playing, but I think it's getting too rough, or I don't know if it is turning into fighting or anything like that. And, sometimes it'll be a video. Sometimes we're actually there to watch the dogs play and that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, let me go through what I see. But yeah, most of this is just good old fashioned boys being boys kind of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found, Robert, a good way or like, I guess, a more successful way of being able to explain to volunteers the importance of, real obedience training with the shelter dogs that can kind of help them jump the hurdle of the emotional part? I think you're absolutely correct when you said that it's an emotional thing. They're volunteering to feel good, right? And therefore petting the dogs and playing with the dogs always seems like the better thing to do. But I know when we were doing a lot of shelter stuff, I was always constantly trying to tell them, that's great. I love that. For the last 5 minutes, that's fantastic. But maybe the first 10, 15 minutes can be a heel walk into some obedience or something along those lines. And, the emotion takes over.
I think it's hard. I mean, I do empathize with the volunteers because they think these dogs the dog's been pent up for 16 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours, and now you can take it out and now you're going to tell it to do something and don't pull on a leash and don't do. And there's certain times, like one thing I always stress with people is in a kennel run, like I don't know how your kennels are where you are, but I know they're like in Nashville and I know what they're like in LA. When that dog comes out of the kennel, popping that dog and trying to get the dog to sit and be calm and walk at a heel is the dumbest thing you can do. Like when I get a dog out of the kennel, he's on a noose, I make sure there's nobody around and just pull me to where you want to go. Let's just get out of this stress, because the stress and the pressure of me telling the dog and doing all this stuff often makes the dog really untrustworthy of me, not enjoying the process or anything like that. But the people think, oh, that's all they got. Then they're out and then he's running around and he's jumping around and he's peeing and he's pooing. And okay, now, oh, there's a ball in the yard. Oh yeah, kick the ball and the dog's chewing the ball. And now they're going to, they feel like they're the fun police really when they're doing it. But I've told them over and over, and this has really made sense to them. I said, if you just want to have fun with the dog, then keep doing what you're doing and he can stay here forever and have fun with you. But if you want the dog to actually get a home, you have to teach the dog a skill that will help them get a home. And training is really hard because if you think about it, you're oftentimes slow to see progress, right? It's not like playing ball. Playing ball is instant satisfaction, right? It's just, and we live in an instant time where Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, it's all scroll. So we want fast, fun things for the dog, but it doesn't move into adoptions. It doesn't help the dog at all. It does not give the dog the tools he needs to get out. And I often said that being in a shelter is like being in jail. If they've done something wrong or not, the way to get out of jail is to build a skill that will help you stay out of jail, because they may get out and come right back in. I mean, how many dogs, the recidivism rate in shelters is crazy, because people see the dog, oh, he pooped in the house. Well, yeah, but you just got him and you're just letting him run around. So it's really, really about education and getting volunteers to understand that the more you do for this dog that might not be as much fun, the more you'll help this dog get out of here quickly and stay out forever.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think this would be a good place to segue into our agenda for today. So what we're doing today is we have a bunch of questions from our social media, from our YouTube, and we're going to ask Robert those questions because, usually you just hear from Nelson, Matt, and myself, and we have very similar opinions on things. So now you're going to get to hear a little bit of a different opinion, potentially. And the first question is right along the lines of what we were just talking about. So it's, this person wants to rescue a dog, and they...
Before you read that question, can I just say, on that note of agreeing, we just got a comment on one of the videos one episode we actually put on YouTube. It was on dog intros. And the person's like, this is worthless. I was watching and I'm taking notes and everything you say, writing it down. And then afterwards, the next person jumps in and says that you're wrong and to do it a different way. And I remember that episode because we disagreed quite a bit on how we would do an intro. And I replied, that's the joy of dog training though, right? That both those ways are right. They're just different. So, but sorry, go ahead. Well,
no, that was good insight for sure. And I think it's definitely a good point. So this person wants to rescue a dog. All they want is for it to be a good pet inside their house and not be mean to people. And they're looking for help with how they should evaluate picking out a good dog for that.
Well, the number one thing I always go by when I'm looking at a rescue dog is I talk to the volunteers and the staff. They've got the greatest insight on the dog. And you really hope that the staff is always honest as well. But remember, when you see a dog in a shelter, it's not necessarily the dog you're going to get when it gets home. Dogs mask behaviors in shelters in self-preservation. Dogs are masters of self-preservation. So oftentimes I've seen dogs, and even recently, there was a dog that was sweet as pie, the sweetest dog. It got out, it tried to literally kill somebody. It was super, super different behavior. And I never, ever saw the behavior in the shelter. That was the rarest case I'd ever seen in my life. But I've seen dogs that are super more dominant in the shelter, and they get out and then they're actually like pussycats. So I like to talk to volunteers. I like to get the dog off the site of the shelter. I like to see, a lot of times they'll have off-site adoptions, and I like to see how the dog is in different environments. Sometimes they'll let you foster to adopt a dog. That's a good way to do it. If you're looking for a really chill dog, watch your breed. Don't get something like a pit or a Malinois or a border collie. Opt for something more like a golden retriever mix or a lab mix or something like that. I would also look for age. I wouldn't get a dog under 3 because you're still going to be dealing with a puppy in that adolescent phase. So an older dog is always going to be a nicer dog. More than likely it was already in a home, already housebroken, and will settle into another home much more easily. I mean, seniors are the best. I mean, I love senior dogs because they're just cool. They're worldly, they're wise, they've got gray hair, they're chill. I love old dogs. I hate puppies. I just think they're horrible.
So a few follow-up questions that jump out to me from that. If you had somebody who's never had a dog, so 0 dog experience, what breed would you recommend that they look at?
Golden Retriever. Some kind of I would say, first of all, I'd look at an older dog, like a dog over 3. I would look at a very mellow type dog. I wouldn't look at a dog that has the propensity for dog reactivity. I wouldn't look at any terriers. Terriers are tough breeds. People poo-poo what I say, but terrier is bred to hunt vermin. People don't understand what these breeds were originally done. Now, that being said, some dogs don't get the owner manual when they come out of the womb. So there's labs who didn't get the lab owner manual, but instead went to the shepherd manual and got that manual. But for the most part, the reason we've bred dogs and grouped them into specific groups is because of a genetic set of behaviors that they're predisposed and bred for. So if you have something like a terrier and then you wonder why it's trying to, kill the squirrel in the backyard or attacking other small dogs, well, that's just genetically what it was bred to do. And, you look at a dog like my wife and I were talking about the other day. My dog he's very well trained, but he's only 3. But he'll pull, he'll go forward and look at things. But he's a Malinois. He's super alert. Like the entire time we're walking, he's like this, Now she's got a Labrador, a very well-bred English Labrador. Every time he's walking with her, he's like this. And so, a Labrador was bred to be a companion dog, to go to follow his owner in the field. And when he's told to go, he goes, and otherwise he stays close to the owner because they're hunting or whatever. Golden Retriever, same kind of idea. But you look at a Malinois or something like that, or a Sighthound. Look, a Sighthound's a horrible dog to have. They're terrible, terrible dogs because they're always, every little thing is like that. They're crazy. So you have to look at the breed and the behavior of what's going to be easier for that first time owner, Matt. Like that's what I always try to encourage people, because it's the first time, it's kind of overwhelming, I think, when you first bring a dog home and you've never had one, right? Like I remember when I got my first dog as an adult, I was like, how am I going to go out? Like, what if I want to go to dinner with my friends? What do I do with the dog? And those things are really hard to figure out. And once you figure them out, then it's like, wow, it's really not a big deal. But if you're trying to figure it out with a dog who's eating through the drywall, it's a pain in the neck.
If you had, at the very beginning of talking about picking a dog from a shelter, you talked about how the dog that you see in the shelter is not what you might get in your home. How long before you really start to see that actual dog? Is it a week? Is it a month?
I have a rule of 3. 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, and then that's it. And I use a different test with puppies, but I think 3 days the dog just needs to chill out, and just like there's no expectations to the dog. Just let the dog chill, let the dog kind of blossom of themselves. And usually the only thing I'll ever do during that time is maybe hand feeding and like teaching the dog the crate is a good thing. After 3 weeks, I think you'll start to see the personality of the dog come out. But remember, the awesome thing with dogs is even though you're seeing behaviors coming out, they can be kind of molded into things that work for you and the dog, because the dog is dependent on you. Dogs are very, very, very dependent on us as the ape, right? They're the wolf, we're the ape. So they're dependent on us for food, structure, and safety. So if we provide those 3 things for the dog, we can really mold that dog into the dog we want it to become, as opposed to just willy-nilly letting the dog, the dog developing us into who they want us to be. So I would say the 3-week window would be my number one thing. 3 days to just let the dog chill, maybe hand feeding, maybe a little bit of walking and crate training, but I wouldn't really start putting any demands on the dog or any freedom on the dog in those first 3 days. I would let him see, hey, you're safe here, you're going to be fed, but not an incredible amount of structure for the dog at that point.
I feel like I see a ton of wolf training ape these days. Right?
Yeah.
So that seems to be way more prevalent, unfortunately.
Did you read the book called The Philosopher and the Wolf?
No, I haven't.
It's an old book. You'd love. And I've told so many people, because people said, "What book do you recommend on dog training?" And I said that one, because it has nothing to do with dog training, but it has everything to do with the relationship. Because dog training, to read a book on dog training, I think it's really hard. There's very good books out there, by the way, but I think understanding a relationship is more important than understanding how to train the dog. And I think a lot of training, especially online training that you're seeing now, is dependent on, here's how to use the e-collar, here's how to use this, here's how to do that. And we're not focusing on the most important thing in dog training, and that is a relationship.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that, definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of people blow right past that, for sure.
Well, yeah, because what happens is you go to a seminar and somebody teaches you, oh, this is what you got to do with your dog. But the problem with seminars, and this is why I really don't do seminars, I think they're fine, but what happens is you go to a seminar, you bring your dog up, and the person, the leader of the workshop, what's wrong with your dog? Oh, yeah, the dog is reactive, and he pulls on a leash. And then they do something with the dog, they go, and this is one thing I really hate. They'll say, "This dog's not reactive. It's you." Da, da, da. Like they start insulting the people, and then they start handling the dog, and the dog is completely freaked out, right? He's in front of 30 people, 40 people. He's in a room he's never been in. You hand the strange man or woman your leash, and the person is like leash popping him and giving him treats and giving him a toy, and the dog's like overloaded and is not, of course the dog's not going to react at that point. Maybe if it's a really hot dog, it'll bite the person, but for the most part, dogs are really easy to acclimate, and they're in this mode of like, okay. And then this guy looks like a miracle worker. This woman giving the seminar looks like a miracle worker. We're not focusing on the dynamic of what's this dog's life like day to day? Like, tell me what this dog does when he first gets up in the morning, because that is the component that triggers everything from there on in. What is the minute he wakes up, some kid stepping on his tail and poking him in the eye? Or, we need to know that. And that relationship, the way the dog sees the world, can oftentimes change the way the relationship is with us. So we need to really put those things into promise. And it's not, people have been saying lately, oh, Robert Cabral is a purely positive, ideologue. I'm not purely positive. I've fought on the front to keep e-collars and prong collars and tools legal in Europe as well as in the United States. And I still believe they should be legal. I believe that I personally do not go to the e-collar as a number one training aid. I start everything with treats and positive interaction because I like it better. Shmoo was trained with very, very positive training as well as e-collar training. And recently I put the e-collar away because I didn't like the way it was working with him. So the great thing about the tool is, as long as it's legal, I can make a decision whether I want to use it or I don't want to use it. That's why it's important to have these tools, because if I want to use it, I should be able to use it. But when trainers use that as the go-to and, like, okay, you sign up for the course, you get the free e-collar and we start with this and we start, all this stuff. I see a lot of bad training online, And I think we got to do better for our dogs. And the number one way to get that is to have trainers like us talking more about building a positive relationship with us so that when we do have to correct our dog, we have something to come back to, right? If we just immediately start correcting dogs, then we're just seen as tyrants. And I think dogs are smart enough to try to avoid that. Whereas if we start with everything positive and then suddenly we give the dog a correction, the dog's like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? And it snaps much better in their mind to want to please us because we've been so good to them all the while.
Yeah, makes sense for sure. More than anything, making sense to actually talk about it. Mm-hmm. Right. And actually having people see, because that's one of the things that I've talked about before is when people are so afraid of something like the e-collar, well, it shuts down all communication about it, right? And, it's hard to know which one's good versus which one's bad. But more importantly, just like what you were saying, it works for some dogs and it doesn't work for others. And maybe there's a lot of good experience out there that your neighbor had, but everybody's too afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, I think the e-collar is really frowned upon because we're not a lot of times seeing things that are beneficial for a dog. Like if you looked at an IGP dog and watched what it can do, or an obedience dog or whatever, and then somebody said, "Oh, we used e-collar on this and this part because it was like." Look, I'll be honest with you. If you have a dog that's 100 feet away from you, you cannot correct that dog without an e-collar, because if you're marching up to the dog, the old hunting way that you would march up to the dog or drag the dog, where the sit whistle was blown, and drag him all the way back there and then sit him again and walk away from him. Well, now you're building an aversive to you. The brilliant part of the e-collar is you can move the aversive off of you. And that's why I think it's such a valuable tool in really creating a solid relationship with a person. But when people use the e-collar and they've got the remote and they're standing there going, sit, 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 the dog sees the e-collar. And I've seen plenty of military dogs, that were coming out of the Netherlands, as well as mainly the Netherlands. A while ago, these dogs, when they saw a person with an e-collar, these people were getting their hands chewed up because they knew that was the e-collar. That's what's causing me pain and discomfort. And you're not being very refined about it. So, and on the other side too, people are saying, oh, what are you going to do? Treat training is bullshit because what are you going to do when you don't have treats? Well, what are you going to do when you don't have an e-collar? right? I always have the
Sure.
relationship between me and my dog. So any tool, whether it's a toy, whether it's an e-collar, whether it's treats or clicker, I'll poo-poo any of them over the relationship. But I like clicker training. I think it's fantastic training. I think it's very, very valuable for a lot of dogs. I love e-collar training, very, very valuable to a lot of dogs. But don't put aside developing the relationship between the dog and the person, because that's what everything is cemented around.
I think one of the biggest challenges I see with the internet and with e-collar training is, and I don't want to bash franchises because there's some really good ones and there's some that aren't good, but when there's a set program that some company's doing where and there's, you know, the companies I'm talking about, where every dog has to be on an e-collar. And I personally love e-collars. And if my client's training their dog off leash, the odds of us being on an e-collar are, mid 90s probably if we're doing off leash training away from home. So I'm not bashing them in the slightest, but there's a lot of programs where it's e-collar immediately, which isn't even necessarily bad. It could be done, properly, but it's e-collar immediately with every single dog, no matter what. And every dog has the same training program. And I think that's what then, and I'm training a dog I'm picking up this afternoon who went through e-collar training with another trainer. It was all place command. They were on a cot all the time, really heavy on the e-collar, and it created issues. But they could have used that same tool and we're going to use an e-collar and we won't have a problem with it because we're going to use it a lot differently and it's not going to be locked in a place command.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it, Matt. I think franchise training is crap. Because I see a lot of these franchises, what they do is they run ads and they go, oh, learn to train dogs. These are the skills you need to have. I looked at one of them. I'm not going to say which one it is, but one of them said, learn to be a dog trainer. Here's the skills you need to have. You need to be able to post social media. You need to be able to edit videos. I swear to God, the top 4 skills had to do with posting videos on social media. And then you can come down for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'll teach you how to train dogs and you'll have a franchise in your city and you got to pay, whatever. And I thought, that's crap, right? Every dog is trained on an e-collar. That's ridiculous. Like I can't think of anything dumber than saying every single dog is going to be trained on an e-collar.
Or in any way, right? I mean, realistically, again, it's not just e-collars. It's when you have decided that every single dog is going to be trained the exact same way. Right. That's the breakdown. That's the failure.
The key there, Nelson.
Yeah. Well, how about this? You go to a seminar and every dog is going to play tug, right? I can get any dog to play tug. There's a well-known trainer that my wife went to, and she said, I can get any dog to play tug. And Janet had a black Labrador that was a seeing eye dog. This dog wouldn't tug. Right. And I've seen dogs that won't tug. And if you as a trainer are limited in that skill set that every dog has to do this, right? That you have this ideology that everything fits in this box, please don't train dogs, right? Because dogs are uniquely individual. And, sometimes I get dogs that just don't respond to food. They just will not. And people say, well, then just don't feed them for 2 days. Well, that's stupid, right? I mean, I don't need to deprive. I mean, you can do it, right? But there's other ways. If you can't think outside that box, you shouldn't be training dogs.
I did a house call yesterday with an Anatolian Shepherd mix out of a shelter, super shut down and no interest in play or food even with his owners generally, and certainly not with a new person. So we just wandered around outside on a leash and just wandered and walked and wandered. And, by the end of 45 minutes or an hour, roughly, that time frame, you see the dog starting to come out of its shell through no, I don't want to use the word pressure because I don't mean training pressure, but no force of like, hey, you have to engage with me. Right.
Yeah.
Just wandered.
Well, that's a great point, though. I mean, think about it. Not every dog is cut out. Think of the genetic predisposition of a dog, and what are they wired to do? If they're wired to chase, then use a flirt pole. But don't teach. Like I see people teaching flirt poles to stop aggression. So they're saying, "Oh, just channel it to the flirt pole." That's crazy. Like I think people are so limited in their training that that's all they can do. They just end up in these loops, like in these boxes where they can't come out of it, and that's all they know because their training isn't diversified. You can't really learn to train a dog through an online course or a seminar or this or that. What it takes is hands-on experience. And it takes a lot of that. Finding a good trainer and being an apprentice with that person and watching the different dogs. We did Bound Angels University in the shelter for 3 days, 24 hours, 3 8-hour days, solid, most of which were spent handling dogs, small theory portion. And afterwards, they said, do we get a certificate? And I thought, oh, God, everybody wants a certificate. I said, yeah, you get a certificate of completion. It means you showed up, but you're not certified in any way to train a dog. You don't really, unless you've put your hand on at least, I would say, 50 dogs, you shouldn't consider yourself a dog trainer. And how many people are online, showing their dog is doing little tricks and stuff like that. And then they're reading stuff online and now they're behavior experts. That's crazy. I should be a surgery expert because I've read a couple, posts online about surgery.
I pulled a big splinter out of my hand the other day. So that's...
Well, there you go. Dr. Matt.
Well, let's move us along. What else do we
let's
have?
switch gears for a second. So
Sure.
This client states that their dog jumps on guests at their home. It's worse when their children have friends over, and the dog has been through basic obedience training at Petsmart, and it excelled there, but they're looking for help on how they can stop the jumping.
Well, kudos for doing the Petsmart training. At least they tried something, and sometimes training should be more about lifestyle than about sit down and stay, because the dog may not have the capacity to sit or stay in their place when there's children around. So it might be kind of hard for them. The reason dogs often do things incorrectly is because that behavior gets rewarded. And reward doesn't necessarily mean a positive thing, but it's an interaction. So I'll give you a great example. My dog loves to fight, right? He's a very dominant, strong dog. So if you correct my dog, he thinks it's a game and he will fight and play and keep that whole thing going. So with these people, if people are coming over and he jumps on them and then they push him down, they say, hey, don't do that. And he jumps up again. They push him on, hey, don't do that. They get in this whole cycle of, oh, okay, this is the way my life is. I do something and they push me down. That's the way they interact with me. So when I try to teach a dog not to jump on somebody, depending on the dog, but most of the time I try to put them in a position where they can't do it in the first place. Right. And so that would involve having the dog on a tether or having the dog in a crate, but not having the dog on a place where he's going to jump off the place and jump on somebody and they're going to push him down and put him back in his place, because now you have this whole chain behavior where the dog sees that this is the game, right? I get off my cot, I jump on him, he pushes me back, I get on my cot, I jump. So if they can't do it in the first place, in other words, one thing a friend of mine does in Europe, what he does is tether the dog on a bed. So another dog's in the bed and there's like a little hook in the wall and it's on a harness and put him there. So the dog can't get up. But while he's there, he's chewing a bone. So he has a way of satiating himself. He learns to be there. In the beginning, obviously, you don't want to put a dog someplace tethered and then have kids running right in front of him. That's going to cause a lot of frustration and can cause bad behaviors. But getting a dog used to when they're doing the right thing, it's a positive experience, right? It's rewarded, whether it's through something that satiates them, like a bone or a toy or something like that, or just a calm behavior. And it's also something that I've started telling more of my clients and friends that I train with. Teach your dog the first thing to be calm before you teach him to be excited. Because we all teach our dogs to come out of the car and play tug and chase the ball. And then we go, okay, lie down. Well, that's kind of backwards, right? So you're taking a dog, you just rev the engine and now you're turning it off, right? Instead, let it idle for a while, let it warm up, and then take it around the track a couple times. So with a dog, what I do with my dog when I train is I take the dog out of the car and I put him on a mat at the park and I just go, just lie there for 10 minutes. And I check my email, I check my social media, I might call my wife, check the weather, and then I go, okay, now we're going to go train. So the mindset is I'm calm, I get to do things, as opposed to I get to do a lot of things. I'm all excited. I'm revving, and now I got to be calm, right? Dogs can't do that. It's very, very, very hard for them, and it's very, very unfair to expect that of them. So crate training is a great thing, by the way. Put the dog in a crate, give him a Kong, give him a bone, let him be there, let people walk around. If he starts barking, maybe cover the crate or something like that. But let him see that things are going to happen in his life, right? Things are going to be exciting around him, and he doesn't need to interact with it. There's no expectation of him interacting in a positive or a negative way with those things that are going on.
So let me ask a follow-up question here. And I don't think the client asked this, but so like, let's say they did your advice, so they use the crate or tether or whatever, right? To keep the dog up and the dog is calm. What then? How do they get, if they say, hey, I want to get to the point where I don't need that anymore, right? Like dog just learns how to not jump when someone comes in. What's the next step you would suggest for him?
Short interactions, right? Short, successful interactions. I think people throw they get their feet in the shallow end, and then next thing they throw them in a 30-foot pool. If people really go too fast, and dogs with any training, whether it's social type training or behavior or obedience type training, we need to introduce the dog slowly, successfully, and then remove the dog. So in other words, let's say you had the dog on a mat or in a crate for the first few times people come over, dog is successful. Okay, then take the dog on a tether, walk over. The people are there. They say hi to the dog. They don't get to go, and whatever. He walks up, we pet the dog. Okay, good. Now we walk the dog away. They're another successful step. So we build on successful steps. And that's something I've always done with any dog I've trained is work it, succeed, stop. Because most people train to failure, right? It's kind of like people train dogs like they go to the gym. Like they put 225 on, they get 1 rep, 2 reps, and they can't get the weight off their chest, right? Now they're stuck under the bar. So dogs don't learn like that. Dogs learn by bench pressing 135 pounds 15 times, and it was super, super, super easy. And God, I can do that. Okay, put it back on. The dog needs to feel like it can succeed, and there's no pressure of failure. We push the dog to failure once we understand that, but we don't use it as a teaching process. We use failure as a proofing process to see where the dog will fail. And we, as trainers, find that level, and just before they're about to fail, we stop and we succeed, right? Because if we push a dog to failure, just like a child, and I hate human analogies with dog training, but any mammal, I should say, in failure, there is that underlying mental state of failure where you think, I'm going to fail. Like if you got crushed by 225 on the bar, on the bench press, you're very, very hesitant to put 225 back on the bar to bench again, especially if there's nobody watching you. But if you succeeded at 205, and I'm going with weightlifting analogies today, I don't know why, but if you succeeded over and over, you'd be like, I got 205, 225, it's only 20 more pounds, put another 10-pound plate on each side. Let's do this. Come on. And you do it and you're successful. So we need to find where the dog is successful and keep repeating that success to make the dog feel successful. Because if he feels like I sat in front of this person and I got some treats and I went away, I didn't jump on him, right? They're not going to think they didn't jump on him, but they didn't jump on him. They didn't get to fail, right? They got an interaction for success. And that we build on that success over and over and over again. And I used this fingerprint analogy when I was talking to somebody the other day on a podcast, and with my friend Jonas. And I said, when you have a piece of clay and you put your fingerprint on it, depending on how long you let that clay harden, you need so much more pressure to put a new fingerprint over it, right? So if the dog fails and keeps failing, that fingerprint is getting harder and harder and harder. But if the dog succeeds, now it's less likely to fail, right? Because everything's built on success. So yeah, take the dog off, with a leash, bring him up, let him meet people. He does it for a minute or two. He doesn't get into that excited state. Good boy. Yeah, the boy. Take him away and then build on that. It takes time, but a lot of it could be too, Matt, that the client's dog is very young and is very in play mode, and it's not something I would really start off by punishing that behavior or by I would correct the behavior, but I wouldn't, and when I'm saying punish, I'm saying in the colloquial sense, not in this, I would punish it in a scientific behavioral sense that we want to eliminate or extinguish the behavior, but we don't want to, leash pop the dog or smack the dog with a newspaper or squirt it with lemon juice or something. We want to kind of just, build on the success. And oftentimes when we build on success, then we extinguish the bad behavior.
Well, I think you hit on one of the things that I feel like dog owners really struggle with, and it's just setting up the situation so that they can get that success. I feel like
100%.
it's always a chore to have to push somebody over and over again to set up a situation, and they're like, "Well, I just want to deal with it when it happens." But when you deal with it when it happens, it's your friends are coming over for dinner and you're trying to cook. You can't work with the dog while you're trying to get the meal ready to have with your friends, right? And it never ends up happening. They don't get that success because they're not setting it up.
Well, so you got a great point, Matt. And what I equate that to is somebody's out of shape, right? And they go, "Oh, my best friend's getting married next month. I got to get in shape for the wedding." Right? So they got 30 days to get in shape. So they'll probably go, do Ozempic and a binge and purge diet or something, as opposed to just being in shape. Just, this is your lifestyle. So I try to train my dog for things as a lifestyle thing. Most important thing for my dog is that the dog has a happy, successful life. Not that he gets a title or a ribbon or a trophy or anything like that. The dog needs to live in the world. We need to be able to go out and be in the world. He doesn't even need to meet a lot of people, but he's not allowed to lunge at people and bite them, right? He can just stay with me. So, yeah,
Sure.
I think you're right. I think people need to be more cognizant of what we need to do to build success as to make success.
So switching gears again, this is probably our most popular video on YouTube is Matt Covey going over what to do if a dog attacks you. And I don't have a specific question from a person because the comments are just all over the place on what you should do. And most of them aren't questions. Most of them are like, shoot the dog and crazy stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what advice would you give to someone about what they should do if they're out for a walk and a dog tries to run up and attack them?
Attack their dog or them as a person?
The video is mainly about just them as a person and not with another dog. So let's just keep it at that. So it's just a person out for a walk, random dog runs up to them to attack them.
It's really hard because, one, you have to take into consideration that not everybody is going to be dog savvy. There are people who are very afraid of dogs because they've been attacked and been bitten. So they're going to do the absolute wrong thing, right? So the dog is going to be coming up and they're going to interact with the dog in a either threatening or what the dog might see as playful type way, screaming, running away, flailing their hands, doing all those things. Most dogs that I've dealt with in shelters and with aggression will either have zero interaction if there's no pressure. Dogs don't like, and you'll see it too with dogs on other dogs. Like my Labrador doesn't have any interaction when my Malinois runs up on his face. He just kind of goes, like that kind of Labrador thing. Like I don't even notice you. I don't even acknowledge you. So that's the first thing, right? That's the very, very first thing I always would encourage people to do. So if a dog runs up on you, just, don't give it the energy that it should, because that's going to determine if the dog is really going to attack. Now, if the dog is going to attack, sometimes a step in the direction, stepping into the dog puts forward pressure on a dog. And most pet dogs don't like forward pressure. They cower to forward pressure. Now, if you have a dog who's a serious dog and it's seriously going to bite you, you're going to get bit. You just have to determine where you want to get bit, in a quick decision, because a biting dog is going to bite whatever's in front of it. That's why you'll see animal control agents or even judges in protection dog trials, they always carry a metal clipboard. So they just put it in the dog's mouth, and I've seen brilliant judges at those trials. When the dog comes, they literally see the dog coming and they just, put the clipboard in front of them, and the dog just latches onto the clipboard, and then they go, okay, get your dog, you're out of the trial. So that's the key, that dogs tend to bite what's in front of them. And, when they have a hold of whatever they have a hold of, we can get into a whole technical thing of this. It's like to minimize the injury is to just allow them to hold on to what they have, because it's always worse when they bite the second time, because now you've got 2 bites and 3 and 4 and 5. So my thing, 3 steps. Step 1 is I ignore the dog, because 90% of dogs are not going to bite. Even if they're in attack mode, they're going to bark and intimidate. And if there's nothing there, they probably won't do anything. Forward pressure would send most dogs back. I use forward pressure more if I had a dog with me because I want to get that dog away from me. Like I walk straight in front of him and get in. It would allow it to go, hey, 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 and just walk in. And that's worked for me in every situation with dogs in the last, I'd say 5 years when I had another dog with me. And the third, if you're going to get bit, then I would just, I would take that one bite and hang on until somebody can get me out of there. Is that totally contrary to what you guys said, probably?
No, I think a lot of it is, semantics, right? Because the video is framed, what do you do if a dog is attacking? So I get a lot of feedback where people are like, well, my advice is forward pressure for sure and yell at the dog and back it down. But that's predicated on, you opened with this, Robert, but knowing dog behavior, knowing the dog is going to attack. Obviously that's not my advice if it's a dog that's trotting up to me and it hasn't decided if it's going to attack and I'm not sure it's going to attack. I'm not
100%.
I'm not using forward pressure and screaming at that dog. So it's hard, right? Because my advice was what to do. Like when I've determined the dog is going to attack me, I'm going on the attack. I'm not turning my back and there's no way I'm running. I'm going to meet aggression with aggression.
Sure.
But if the dog is just trotting up to me with his tail up, then of course I'm not meeting it with aggression yet.
So we're kind of on the same page then. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. And
it's funny. We did a podcast, I don't know, probably like a year and a half ago where we talked about what to do if you're on a bike and a dog goes to attack you. And I gave the answer because I do bike. I don't want to say a ton, but enough to have had dogs come after me. And my advice was, first and foremost, if you feel like you can outrun it, just try and outrun it on the bike. And then I stopped and said, but there's a lot of people in this world that would be surprised at how fast a dog can run. And there's going to be people who aren't in good enough shape to outrun the dog on the bike. So I told them the advice was get off the bike before the dog gets to you and put the bike in between you and the dog and let the dog attack the bike, right? Sort of like what you 100%. Said with the clipboard. And I felt like that was such a good answer. And when I was looking for questions for today, I had found some comment on that episode, which I had never seen until like this last week, where somebody's like, that's the worst advice I've ever heard. You're going to get somebody killed. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I'm still pretty happy with it. Like, I feel like
I second good. Is the video, specifically your video about the bike, you ate a lot of crap for. Everyone's like, that's stupid, that'll never work, just outrun them. And we replied back like, you can't always outrun them. What if you're in the city and there's a stoplight, right? Sure. But what should make you feel good, Vloss, is on the other dog attack video, literally dozens and dozens of people, we don't even talk about bikes, and they've commented and said, I had a dog attack me on my bike. I got off my bike and used it as a weapon and a barrier, and it worked wonders. It's like flip-flop. I need to link those two videos together.
But everybody's got an opinion, right? And I'm always mesmerized how many people come on my page, people I don't even know, and spew their opinion. And I'm like, I don't even know who you are. Like, it's like if somebody comes up to you at the grocery store and says, why are you buying that cereal? Like it's incredible to me that people have this audacity to come. You gave your opinion, right? That's what works for you. Like I didn't ask for, it's not the Oprah Winfrey show. You don't get to just, chime in and give your input.
It's, what was the show? It's the Jerry Springer show. That's what the internet is.
Yeah, that's what the internet is like.
That's everyone fighting. All right, so, boss, what's next?
Yeah, so my dog won't jump in my car. How do I make him jump up?
Well, if you want him to jump up one time, you can, throw a cookie in there, right? I mean, that's the way I've always gotten dogs to go into cars, is just put food in there. But what I would think of as a bigger picture is I would want my dog to have a great experience in the car. So whenever I have a young puppy or a new dog, I have a set of protocols that I do. For example, they have to get in the car because we're going to go places. His entire life, we're going to be going places. And my cars, both of our cars, are fitted with crates, right? In each of our cars, we have 2 crates, one for Shmoo, one for Dwayne. Now, you've got to get in a crate. And I make crate training very, very fun at home. And I make crate training very excitable in the car. So what happens is, as young puppies, there's always food in the crates. If they want to get in the car, there's food in the car. There's food in the crate. And that's how I start everything. I've had dogs where I've had to use, an e-collar to get them in the car, but very, very, like the low stim, keep it on until they jump in the car, turn it off, and where it's literally it's like going, a very humane way to do it. I mean, I think I did that with 2 dogs in my entire 20-year career. Most of the time, if I throw a cookie in and I pick him up and I put him inside and he comes out, and as soon as he comes out, I throw another cookie in and he looks at me and I keep putting cookies in the car, he figures out, okay, I'm going to go in the car. Or take his favorite toy, throw it in the car. While he's in the car, play tug with him in the car a little bit. He pops out, toy goes back in the car. You just have to outthink it. And people say, well, it's all this positive stuff with toys and treats. I just make my dog get in the car. Well, I'd hate to be married to you, but, it's probably, if that's how you run your life, and a lot of people do, it's just not the way I do things. And it's totally okay. Do it. But I wouldn't want to be your dog. I said something recently that I really keep going back to, and I'm going to make more out of this. I always say, would you want to be trained by you if you were at the other end of the leash? And I really kind of adapted that as like a trademark, like kind of like a saying, because that's what it's really all about, right? I mean, yeah, I can get a dog to do anything, but how I get them to do it is what's more concerning to me. Do I get a dog to do obedience because he has to do obedience, or do I get my dog to do obedience because he wants to do what I want him to do so badly because we have such a great relationship? That's the bigger picture in training. And as trainers, that's what we should be thinking about. It's not about getting the dog to do something. It's about mentally figuring out how to get them to want to do that something.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Challenge right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nelson, what were you saying?
That I like the saying a lot, right? It's an interesting way of changing perspective.
Yeah.
And I like that you mentioned circling back to crate them in the car. I know that wasn't the question, but many, many, many people don't crate their dogs in the car. Mm-hmm. And I would highly suggest it. I mean, safety. When the dog is not crated, they can fly into you and kill you by, if you were to smash into something, have a 60-pound dog rocketing through the air at whatever speed. I mean, I would crate them 100%. And there's some good, nice crates out.
Yeah.
Well, you've got some, Robert. Janet, when I saw her vehicle, she's got, I don't remember what brand that was, but
yeah, that was one.
Really
that was
nice
one out of
crates.
Switzerland. Yeah, I mean, I've always had crates in my car.
They're a built-in.
The danger of not. First of all, I don't like wire crates in a car. If you're going to use an airline crate or a car crate, one that's specifically made for cars. A dog, even a 20-pound dog, flying through the car, if you get rear-ended or you hit somebody, you rear-end somebody or run into somebody, is something that could break your neck. It could kill your child if you have a child in the car. And also a dog running loose, if they get spooked, they get under your legs and you're driving, dangerous. Jumping out the window. I've pulled dogs off the freeway, off PCH, that have jumped out of cars. If something, God forbid, happens to you and you pull over and they open your car door, your dog gets out. I can give you 50 great reasons to have a dog in a crate and not one reason to not have your dog in a crate. It's very, very, very important. And people say, I don't have a hatchback or an SUV like I have. And I say, well, just put a crate in your back seat, or at the very minimum, put that, that divider up that they can't get through. So if somebody needs to get you out of the car, your dog is safe enough. It's for the dog's safety as much as your safety.
100% agree. Okay, we can circle back to the shelter world for a second. And this person got a dog from a shelter. The shelter told them that the dog was friendly. He's now fought a dog at the dog park, and he barks at every dog that he sees, just looking for help or advice on what to do.
Well, don't go to the dog park. Right. Like, I hate dog parks. I think it's just a lazy person's outlet for their dogs. And again, do I think dogs should play with other dogs? Sure, if it's their friends. But, if we look at dogs being pack animals, they form packs, and then they don't like the other pack. So if you have a dog at a dog park and let's say they are their pack, it's your neighborhood dog park and it's cool, no problem, right? Those are your dogs. They're, them, they're all playing together. Great. But when that new dog comes in, there's always some kind of a a jockey for position in that situation. I mean, anybody who doesn't get that doesn't really understand dogs. It's just the way it goes. It's kind of like, when you got a group of friends, guy friends, and you're drinking, a new guy comes in, you're sizing him up. Can I kick his ass? Is he going to kick my ass? Is he cool? Is he this? Is he going to try to take my wife? Is he going to buy me a beer? We're always sizing people up. Dogs size dogs up. So dogs in a dog park, especially if the dog has already shown that he's either too dominant or too insecure to be in a dog park, a dog doesn't go to a dog park. Dogs don't need dog parks. People need dog parks, right? So train the dog, get the dog socialized.
That's a t-shirt right there.
Okay, make that one. That's one. I'll give you that one, Matt. Matt's the king of the t-shirts, by the way. But yeah, I mean, what was the other part of it though? You said he attacked the dog at a dog park, and what was the other thing, Matt?
Yeah, he fought a dog at the dog park, and he barks at every dog that he sees.
So, he's reactive to dogs, and we don't know if he's being, by his behavior in a dog park, he's obviously being aggressive, but, he's more than likely, if he came out of a shelter, people let him meet every dog, or meet no dog. That's the only way this probably could go. If he meets every dog and he thinks he should meet every dog, it's a disaster waiting to happen, because he's going to meet the wrong dog and he's going to get in a fight like he did at the dog park. If he never met a dog, chances are he probably wouldn't be as pushy because he never had the experience. Like my dog has never met another dog on a walk. I don't do it. The dog is neutral. If I'm at the park and my dog's off leash training with me, which we do, if there's another dog running around, my dog's hyper-focused on me. He's never had the experience where another dog got to come up, play with him, sniff him, they romped around, had a great time. It's never happened. So the dog to be socialized should be social in a setting. In other words, should be at the park, should be able to be social. Oh, I see that dog. Okay, great. Oh, I see that dog. Great. Doesn't mean they get to meet him, and doesn't mean they get to bark at them. But I would start with some socialization, getting the dog out, getting the dog on walks, doing a lot of things like hand feeding the dog, getting the dog. People always say using food to counter aggression doesn't work. And that's absolutely true. But food can prevent the initial curiosity. In other words, if the dog sees another dog and I can give him a cookie, well, he's not being aggressive, right? I can kind of, if I'm able to redirect him there, he's proven to me that's not aggression. But if he is aggressive and I have to give the dog a correction, I certainly want to be able to reward the dog for doing what's right afterwards. In my theory of training, I think that I do correct very, very firmly, especially for aggression, very, very hard. But I also throw a party when they're not aggressive. So they have a really, what I call, I did this thing called a masterclass on corrections. I believe that there's this thing called a sacred space, and I talk very heavily about it. That means whenever possible, I put my hands out like this. So that's 3 feet either side of me, 6 feet complete. I try at all costs never to correct a dog in what I call a sacred space. And I immediately turn pressure corrections off when the dog has ceased behavior. And that's what caused a lot of controversy lately. So if the dog is lunging forward, I give them all the leash to go forward. And when they reach the end of that leash, they get a very hard correction. And usually the correction is firm enough where they come back. And when they come back, I say, oh, good. So they can only figure out that this is a really good place to be right here. And going over there creates immense discomfort. So, yeah, I use a lot of food. I use a lot of positive experience. I keep dogs at a distance. I don't believe you need to get the dog right in front of another dog and fry the dog on an e-collar. I think that sends the wrong message, because a lot of times dogs will transfer physical stimulus, especially prong collar, collar corrections, onto another dog if it's not properly taught early on. So I do believe in conditioning the dog to the e-collar, letting the dog understand it. That's where I do with dogs. In dog aggression, I always use a verbal marker, and I tell the dog, no correction. The dog comes back to me. So the dog never is, and I've seen beginner trainers use e-collars a lot, where the dog gets in front of the other dog and they nail him on the e-collar, and the dog thinks, okay, that dog did it. And then they launch forward. I think I don't think it's a stretch for any competent trainer to understand that. Where other corrections, I don't use any verbals at all. I allow the behavior to correct the dog, like squirrels, rattlesnake avoidance, livestock avoidance, any kind of predatory behavior like that, with the exception of dog-to-dog aggression. So socialization, they just need to socialize the dog, and I mean, it would probably behoove that person to work with a really competent trainer to make that path real easy for the dog. Cause I don't think it's a hard fix. I really don't. I mean, no dog parks, that's the easiest fix. And good social experiences for the dog with structure and consequences.
What's tough taking questions like this, Robert, and I should have opened with this, is that we never have enough detail, obviously.
Sure.
Right? We have no idea. Is that dog, is it aggressive? Is it curious? We don't know its age, its breed, any of that stuff. So we're always giving, of course, general advice for
Total general. Yeah.
how we take it, because we just simply have no clue.
And then generally speaking too, Matt, like, if you just make good experiences for the dog, and the dog continues to be aggressive, well, then you have an aggression issue and you need to look deeper into it. If the basics aren't going to solve it, then it's something very, very serious. So as long as you're able to keep the dog at a distance, using a general kind of an idea to get the dog around and redirect the dog back, is a great one go. Because if you look at it, and you guys have a lot of experience as well, most dogs, if you take a general number, if you interviewed 100 dogs, out of those 100 dogs, if 10 of them are reactive, maybe 3 of them are truly aggressive, right? The other ones just aren't socialized right. They don't know how to play properly, or they're posturing, but they're not really being dominant. They wouldn't fight in that fight. So in this online world where people talk about aggression, you would think that every dog wants to kill every other dog or every person. It's just, we've co-evolved with dogs for tens of thousands of years. They're generally pretty good animals. It's not like
Can I
owning a
just throw out
rattlesnake.
there? Can I just throw out there? I would give so much money to be able to actually interview 100 dogs and have them tell me what they're thinking. Like,
Wouldn't
I
it be
would
amazing?
love that. It would,
From the
that
dog,
would
not
be
the
so
person,
cool.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
From
for
the
sure.
the dog's perspective, what they actually think.
I'd give anything.
I just want to hear the thoughts that are going on in their head when I'm talking to them, and they're like, "This freaking guy."
I think what's hard with all of this, like, the conversation we're having now, talking about social media, dogs, and whether they're aggressive or not aggressive, is there's so few absolutes in dog training, and it's hard to get that nuance online unless you're watching a really long video. Because you could, I could have a trainer tell me, if this dog's, client says it's aggressive, first thing I'm going to do is try some leash work with food and whatever. And I could hear them like, that could work. And someone else could say, first thing I'm going to do is try some leash work with a tug, 50 yards away, and slowly get closer. I'm like, yeah, that could absolutely work.
Totally.
And the next one could say, I'm going to do low collar stem, e-collar stem, low level e-collar stem. And here's my plan. And like, yeah, that could work too.
That could
Another
work,
one could be doing something completely different. But then you could also have the flip side. All of those could also be applied really poorly and create a nightmare scenario. So it's really hard. And I feel bad for dog owners listening to just dog training advice in general, where they hear so many absolutes online and they don't get the kind of nuance of everybody could be right in some ways and everyone can be wrong in some ways too.
Well, that's what you were saying early on in this conversation about the franchise, right? Franchises teach one methodology, and there's no one methodology. With anything in life, there's no one. You can't go to a gym and say, okay, this is what everybody needs to do. Every single person at a gym needs to do something completely different. Every car that goes into a mechanic shop, both cars might not be starting, but one could have a dead battery, one could have a seized engine. So unless we're really open to understanding the individuality of the dog and what they're going through at that time, we're not doing the best service for dogs. And that's an issue I have. And it's something I fought against early on, and I'll always fight against. We got to do better for our dogs.
For sure.
I'm totally agreed. All
All
right.
right. So we have one question left. So we have a 1-year-old Yorkie who is scared of everything, pulls at the leash, and is still not potty trained. They say that she is not motivated by treats or food, so they really don't know where to get started.
Well, I mean, does the dog eat? That would be my first question. Because whenever I see people, he's not motivated by food, I think I always ask, has the dog had dinner?
Let's assume that it has, right?
Okay, yeah. So it probably eats food. So I hand feed the dog. I don't expect anything from the dog. I make sure I hand feed the dog. So that's the very first thing, is I try to build a relationship based on me and the food. Whoever brings the food is the winner, right? And so that's the number one thing. Housebreaking a dog, it's small dogs are sometimes harder because people do things like paper training the dogs or wee pad training the dog, which I think is problematic for the dog. I always believe in crate training, and I don't know anybody who has, who's competent, who's failed at crate training a dog to potty train him. Small enough area in the crate, the dog can stand up, turn around, lie back down. A dog gets tons and tons and tons of breaks out of the house, out of the crate into the yard, and learns that the crate is always near the door, so I can get the dog out into the yard as quickly as possible. That's what I would do. And I've done this with every dog I've had, and I've done this with every client dog I've had, and I've only had one person in my entire life be unsuccessful at it. He was a very, very famous producer and the nicest guy. We got to be really, really good friends, but he would take the dog out. He wouldn't pay attention. He'd bring the dog back in and put the dog in a crate, and the dog would pee in the crate every single time, every single time. So he had actually conditioned the dog to peeing in the crate through being, not getting it. And I said, honestly, the only way we're going to fix this is going to be to send the dog out for a board and train to get them to not do this. Right. Because the behavior is so cemented with him, his house, his crate, and everything. And he said, well, I don't want to do it. I'm going to miss the dog. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll come over and pee in the crate twice a day, and then you won't miss the dog. You'll get everything you love about the dog. And so he laughed, and he did. He sent the dog away. But crate training is the easiest thing for a dog to do. I cannot imagine it not working. But small crate, dog, out, and never, ever, ever bring the dog back in. And I mean, my dog, if I say go potty, and Shmoo is the same way. If I said to Goofy, go potty, and he just went potty, he'd walk over to a tree, lift his leg, and look at me like, there's nothing left in there. There's nothing in there. And I could say it 100 times. He would lift his leg and try to squeeze something out. So that's step one. I would hand feed the dog, and the dog is probably fearful because they probably take the dog out with small dogs, totally understandable and totally common. They take the dog out. As soon as the dog acts somewhat off where they think there's something wrong with the dog, they pick the dog up and put the dog away. So the dog is not learning to be a dog. Remember, it's a terrier. It's bred to hunt vermin. It's a powerful mental dog, whether it's a Yorkshire Terrier or an Airedale Terrier. They're very, very strong dogs. So getting the dog out and just exposing it for short periods of time. Boom, I put you down on the ground. You're panicking. We're going to stay there. We're going to wait. I'm going to protect you and make sure nothing happens to you. But when you cease the bad behavior, then we leave. Right? Isn't that negative reinforcement, or it was something on the quadrant somewhere there? You guys are smarter than me on that. So yeah, I mean, I don't make your bad behavior let you win and pick you up and go, oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. So now the dog has learned conditioned behavior over and over again. You got to get the dog out. So there's two things. One, get it in the crate and take it out a lot into the yard. That's solution one. And solution two is take the dog out and don't let people meet it. Just let it kind of hang out. Put it on maybe a little harness, which might be fine for a Yorkie, and let it sit there. And then I would start feeding the dog. I would take its food with me. Maybe it's getting like the little wet food, the Mighty Dog wet food or something that's really yummy. And I would put that in a little bowl outside with not too many people around in a somewhat remote area, like maybe not at the busiest mall you can find. But I would get that dog to start eating, in the middle of Home Depot.
So the fear part of this is definitely the deeper part of the conversation, but
for sure,
I actually am more interested in something else because I saw people's responses to this person, and a lot of them were about the potty training part of it and were to put a potty pad in the crate with the person. And you had talked about how difficult it is once the dog starts going to the bathroom in the crate, and I would echo that sentiment, right? Once the dog starts going in the crate, it's 1,000 times harder to train them. So what are your thoughts on the people that are saying that, to put the potty pad in the crate with the dog so that it starts going to the bathroom in there?
Well, I mean, I don't like making it easier to try to solve a problem that really shouldn't be there in the first place. And I think I would put the dog in there for a short duration in other words, the key thing to again, we can talk about the fear thing a little bit more, but the crate thing, that's a horrible thing for a dog to have to be peeing in the house. So I would spend an immense amount of time on that. The dog would be either in the crate, tethered, or busy interacting with me, training or doing something. People tend to let the dog, they take it out of their sight. They put the dog in the crate and then they're like, oh yeah. And they're on Facebook or something. And then 3 hours later, they come back and the dog peed in the crate because they were too busy. This is going to require an immense amount of focus for a very, very short period of time. Maybe 2 days, 3 days, where they watch the dog, they see the dog, they take the dog out. And also dogs tend to do things before they pee. They turn around a lot. They get up. They start to look around. No dog just lays down and pees unless they have an infect, like a bladder infection or something like that. And people always say, oh, you're not telling people to have the dog checked for a urinary tract infection. So I'll say it here. Have the dog checked for a urinary tract infection, because everybody says, oh, the dog might, purely positive people are always going to say, well, the dog might have something wrong with it. Okay. So spend $200, take it to the vet, get it checked for a urinary tract infection. And then once that's clear, which I guarantee it's going to be, then start with crate training. But the problem with the thought of that is, Matt, I think the person who's giving them advice on the pee-pee pads in the crate, their thought is like paper training, where you teach the dog to pee on the paper and then move the paper closer and closer to the door until it's eventually outside and the dog learns to go outside. It's just, you're just dragging that process out. You're making a remedial skill for an intellectual, intelligent animal. So yeah, I put them in the crate and I watch them every 2 hours, out. And when they're outside and they make potty, I throw a party. I just go, oh my God, that's great. Some people say don't do it. I do. When my dog goes potty outside, especially as a young puppy, it's like they hit the jackpot. And I say, potty, good potty. Yeah, that's a good potty. I'm like I'm my dog's cheerleader. And so they get that. So now when I take my dog to the agility field and we do 5 runs a day, before he goes on the agility field, there's a little side area. I say, go potty, go in there. And he'll go in there and he'll squat and he'll look at me. And I go, no, you got to go potty. And until he squats and something dribbles out, we're not going to do agility. And sometimes I've had him where he would not do it. I've had, my dog do things where I was like, okay, I just keep putting him back in the crate. And I hold steady to that. You just have to hold steady. It's intense amount of work for a short duration as opposed to a dragged out amount of training forever, because you'll never fix it.
And going back to the being outside and eating in different places, one of the things that you said is just don't let anybody say hi or don't let anybody, come and interact. And I can't tell people enough about social pressure. And yes, the people might be trying to like, oh, come on, everything is awesome out here. But that dog is freaking out and it's only making it worse.
Yeah.
And people have a really hard time conceptualizing that, right? If that social pressure is actually hindering the success.
Yeah. Yeah. The dog doesn't need to have any interaction. The dog can become extremely social without social interaction, but a dog can become very fearful with the incorrect social interaction, right? Somebody steps on the dog's toe, or some kid goes up and pokes the dog in the eye, or some guy. I had a friend of mine who had a dog, and it was a little puppy, it was a Malinois puppy, and he brought it to some pet store, and the guy picked the dog up and he goes, oh yeah, it's my dog, blah, blah. And the guy put the dog's head in his mouth, like that. And he says, that's how I teach. I'm thinking to myself, my God, like how much worse could it possibly be for a dog to experience this big ape putting my head in his mouth? Like the dog is scarred for life, right? So when people say, well, can I say hi to your dog? And I said, no, my dog doesn't want to say hi. I look for the best. It's long-term. It's a long-term issue that you got to look at with your dog. How is this going to play out in 3 years from now? Because that's when the dog is, 3 years old. Like my dog's 2.5 now. And I rarely let people say hi to my dog, but people who know him, I mean, like I was at the vet yesterday and Dwayne had to get his staples removed and he was in there and I brought Shmoo in and the vet was like just cuddling Shmoo and playing with him and holding him, rubbing him and stuff. And then Dwayne came out and he was there. Because I know he doesn't need to meet every single person because I don't know every single person. I don't want to meet every single person in the world. I just want to meet cool people. So I kind of feel the same way for my dog.
For sure.
I feel like I often know someone is a real dog person when they don't try to pet every dog, right? When someone says, I'm a dog person, and they're trying to grab every dog they see, obviously that's different. But
that's a good one.
And we all know, like, when a trainer walks in the house and they're like, this is weird. The dog's usually barking at everyone.
Right.
Like, yeah, because I haven't looked at him or tried to touch him or acknowledge him.
Right. And dogs would do so much better if people could really learn that one piece, right? If they would just let dogs exist without putting all this social pressure on them. And yeah, in a way, we do expect dogs to be accepting and social and stuff. You know, every dog, we expect them to be a Labrador, right? They should just be friendly and leave people when they don't want to talk, but be friendly when they want to be. But all dogs aren't like that. You know, all children don't have great manners. All, you know, people aren't friendly. All strangers aren't friendly. You know, all policemen aren't good. All, you know, whatever. I mean, you can go through a million different things that we need to get rid of these one set of rules for everything.
I agree.
Agreed. And I think people should recognize that the dog's mood might change as well. So
Sure.
I had a Great Dane who loved people, but if I would take her to an event, right, where she's going to meet 50 or 70 people or something like that, she'd get overwhelmed over time, right? Like all these people, especially a Great Dane, like people see her and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she's so big. Like I want to climb on her. I want to love her." And like after the fifth person, you could see her, she'd be like, I think I'm sort of done with you guys. Like,
Yeah.
Would they say, who's walking who?
for sure.
You two remember, Robert, I used to have a Mastiff mix we rescued. Small for a Mastiff, but he was like 150 pounds or so. A really good dog, didn't pull. And my wife is probably like 110 pounds, and she'd be walking him. And she would get so annoyed because people would like yell out of a car, like, who's walking who? And like the dog's like at her side, not pulling, just like a chill dog. And, like,
That's funny.
I'm walking him.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's funny.
Well, I think we did it. We got through all the questions. Nelson, Matt, anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I
No,
want to
I don't have
encourage
anything.
anyone. Robert's going to be speaking at the IECP conference this year in Newport Beach in like a month and a half, end of August.
Yeah.
It's coming up soon. So if you're interested, buy a ticket, head out there. Should be awesome. And then we'll put, links in the description here of Robert's social, so you can go there and find out. He's always posting videos, a lot of cool stuff out of the shelter. Even if you're not looking for more dog training content, if you like dogs, there's all kinds of cool stuff on there of just dogs in the shelter that need a home, and engagement and that stuff matters. So I'd encourage you, if you want to help dogs get adopted out, share that stuff, like it, comment, whatever. Give that engagement.
Cool.
Hopefully we can find some homes for them.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Thanks guys for doing it. Always a great pleasure talking to people who love dogs.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Robert.
Absolutely,
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
It's been great
My
having you.
pleasure. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Sit, stay, press play, and let's begin. Welcome to the pack, you are officially in. Treats, leashes, shaping the game.